Hello, my name is Creighton and I am the Customer Success Manager at Teradici. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Many of our customers are now working from home and are seeking resources to help them get started on remote desktops quickly and easily. Today we will go through the steps to set up and install a Cloud Access Manager in a public cloud, an option for those that are looking for a brokering solution for their cloud access software deployment. Cloud Access Manager is included with Cloud Access software licenses. Under this webinar screen, you'll see an Attachments tab. We've included a copy of the slides today and links to resources that we think will be helpful. I'll be referencing some of these resources in this webinar. Here is the agenda for this video. First, we will cover an overview of Cloud Access Manager, followed by briefly discussing the prerequisites and verifying that our existing AWS environment meets these requirements. Next, I will walk you through a step-by-step demo on creating the Cloud Access Connector machine, creating a new deployment, and installing the Cloud Access Connector. After the Cloud Access Connector is running, we will log into the CAM admin console and add a remote workstation and entitle a user. Last, we will establish a broker PCoIP session into a pre-built Cloud Access software machine hosted in AWS. What is Cloud Access Manager? Cloud Access Manager, or CAM, enables highly scalable and cost-effective cloud access software deployments by managing cloud compute costs and brokering PCoIP connections to remote Windows or Linux workstations. The Cloud Access Manager solution is comprised of two main components: the Cloud Access Manager service, accessible through the CAM admin console, and the Cloud Access Connector. The Cloud Access Manager is a service offered by Teradici to manage cloud access deployments. The CAM admin console is a web application that can be used by an IT administrator to manage and control their cloud access deployments, connectors, and remote workstations. The admin console can be accessed by opening a web browser and navigating to cam.teradici.com. The last component is the Cloud Access Connector. The Cloud Access Connector is software that is installed in a customer's environment that provides connectivity between the PCoIP client and the remote workstation. The Cloud Access Connector provides a single point of entry into the deployment of the remote workstation. It communicates with the CAM service and is part of a deployment. Other key concepts and definitions that will be used in this video are: deployment. A deployment is a way to organize the provisioning and power management of remote workstations, as well as entitling users from Active Directory to these remote workstations. Remote workstations. A remote workstation is a remote desktop or host running Windows or Linux OS with a Cloud Access software agent installed. Users. Users are people that are present in the Active Directory. These are AD objects that are assigned to remote workstations, which they will connect to. This is a screenshot of the CAM admin console interface, which provides a simple user interface for managing PCoIP deployments. Within the CAM admin console, you can perform user entitlement, remote workstation monitoring, power management, and provisioning. Now we will move on to part 2, checking the system requirements. In this next section, we will cover the prerequisites for the Cloud Access Connector, which includes supported domain controllers, authentication services, cloud access software requirements, supported browsers, and required external connections necessary to install the Cloud Access Connector. The Cloud Access Connector is installed on top of an Ubuntu 18.04 server, and the machine must have the minimum requirements of at least 2 CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM, and 12 gigs of available storage. Other Cloud Access Connector requirements are that the server must be able to resolve the Active Directory domain, and the user must have SSH access and sudo privileges onto the Ubuntu server. The Cloud Access Connector will communicate with your existing Windows domain controller to query Active Directory users and computer objects using the secure LDAP-S protocol over port TCP 636. Continuing off with the system requirements, our Cloud Access software requirements. One of our Cloud Access Software requirements is that you must have a valid Cloud Access Software license code. The Cloud Access Software code must be in a similar format to what is being shown on the screen. Teradici local license server codes are invalid for installing the Cloud Access connector. If you have a local license server code, you will need to contact your Teradici sales team before continuing on with this installation video. Another mandatory requirement for Cloud Access Software is an existing remote workstation with the PCoIP agent installed. We also require a supported PCoIP client device, such as a Zero Client or Teradici Windows software client, in order to connect from the client to the agent. Our recommended browsers for accessing the CAM admin console is Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome. Last, in order to ensure that the Cloud Access Connector and Cloud Access Manager can properly communicate, you will need to whitelist the following sites: cam.teradici.com, archives.ubuntu.com, teradici.compliance.flexnet.com, teradicibintray.com, downloads.docker.com, and sumologic.com. For more information about our system requirements, you can refer to the link below. Now we will briefly look at our existing AWS environment to verify that it meets our minimum requirements for installing the Cloud Access Connector. In this diagram, we have set up some of the pre-existing infrastructure in the AWS Oregon region. In our public subnet, we will be deploying a general-purpose T3A instance that will contain the Cloud Access Connector software, along with attaching an elastic IP and a pre-configured security group to allow PCoIP connections. In private subnet number 1, we have a pre-built Windows domain controller with LDAP-S enabled and have configured the security group to allow communication between the Cloud Access Connector and Cloud Access Software remote workstations through a NAT gateway. In subnet number 2, we have two EC2 instances. The first instance is an AWS G3 instance with an NVIDIA M60 GPU. On top of this instance, we have installed the Cloud Access Software graphics agent and have joined it to our Windows Active Directory domain. The second remote workstation is an AWS T3A instance, which has the Windows Cloud Access Software standard agent installed and also joined to the same AD domain. Both of these instances have also been assigned the Windows Cloud Access Software agent security group and only have a private IP. Outside of our AWS cloud environment, we have the Cloud Access Manager service, which we will be accessing through a Google Chrome browser at cam.teradici.com. Last, I will connect to the Cloud Access Connector by its external IP address or FQDN through the Windows PCoIP software client. Here I am inside my AWS console. We will now create the Ubuntu 18.04 machine. From the EC2 console dashboard, we will click Launch Instance to start the instance wizard. Here we are at step 1, choose an Amazon machine image. We will select a Ubuntu Server 1804 machine. And next, we're at step 2, choose an instance type. Remembering that we need to choose an instance type with the minimum requirements of at least 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM, I will choose a T3A medium instance and hit next to configure instance detail. Now we're on the configure instance detail page. I will select my network, so I'll select my VPC or my virtual private cloud, which I pre-configured. I'll select my public subnet. We want to assign a public IP to this machine, so I'll hit enable and we'll hit next to add storage. Remembering that our requirements require at least 12 gigs of usable storage, I will provision 50 gigs of storage to this machine, and I'll hit next to add tags. Now, step 5, selecting tags are optional. Tags are a label that you assign to an AWS resource. They help you to manage your instance, image, and other AWS EC2 resources. For now, we will skip adding tags and proceed to configure the security group. Now we're on step 6, configure security group. So I will select an existing security group. I will select my Cloud Access Connector security group, which I showed you guys before on the architecture page. Some of the rules I have is I have all traffic open internally to allow all my machines to communicate. I have TCP 4172 open for PCoIP Session establishment. I have UDP 4172 open for PCoIP Session data. I have SSH open to my IP only, port 22. I have TCP 60443 open for connection broker communication, and I have TCP 443 or HTTPS open for client authentication and cloud licensing. So once I configured my security groups, I will hit review and launch. Here I'm taking to step 7. I'm just informed that my machine is not eligible for free tier and just a whole bunch of warnings and stuff, but I'll okay this because this is just a test environment, and we'll hit launch. Now it's asking me to select my key pair, so I'm going to choose my existing key pair, which I created previously. I'll acknowledge that I have access to this selected private key file, and I will hit launch instance. Now my instance is launching. We'll wait for my instance to launch, and we'll go back to view the instance on my dashboard. While our new instance is deploying, we will navigate to cam.teradg.com from a Google Chrome web browser. We're taken to the CAM login page. We're going to sign in with our Microsoft credentials. I'll select my account credentials, and we're taken inside the CAM admin console. The CAM admin console is a web interface used for managing your deployments. So from the CAM admin console, we'll select dashboard to bring us home, and then we'll select the kebab menu, and we'll select create a deployment. We need to give our deployment a name, and we need to enter our PCIP registration code. If you don't have a PCIP registration code, you can click this link, and it provides you information on how to get a registration code. Next, we can enter cloud credentials. The cloud service account credentials are used if you want to have the Cloud Access Manager interact directly with your remote workstations hosted in the cloud. This allows for features such as power management, such as powering them on and off and restarting the machines. For now, we will skip that. We will skip adding a cloud credential, and we will select create. So we have successfully created a deployment. Now we want to associate and create a new connector and associate it to this deployment. So we'll select our deployment. Then we'll select the connector tab on the left hand side. We'll hit the big plus button, and we want to give our connector a name. So let's just call it, we'll just call it CLCAC1. And then next we want to generate a connector token, and I'm going to copy this token and save it in a safe location because we're going to use it later. And then we can hit close. So now we're on step 3, installation steps for installing the Cloud Access Connector. So our first step is we want to SSH into the EC2 machine that we're going to install the connector. I'm going to switch to root. And then I want to run a app.get update just to update the AMI. Next, before even installing the Cloud Access Connector software, I want to first make sure that my Cloud Access Connector machine can ping my domain controller. So that looks good. And then I'm going to run one more command at OpenSSL s_client -connect to my domain controller. And then I want to check if port 66 is open and if there's a certificate that resides on it. So that looks good. And now we can proceed to downloading the Cloud Access Connector. So in order to download the Cloud Access Connector, we're going to go to the Teradg Cloud Access Manager admin guide and look under the download the Cloud Access Connector instructions. we have already completed step 1. We are already SSH'd into the machine. Now we're going to just copy this to download the component files from Teradici. What this is going to do is this is just going to create a new directory called v2 connector. It's going to move us into that directory. And then we're going to download the installer, the Cloud Access Connector installer from teradicibintray.com, and we're going to unzip the file. So here we are, we have everything installed, and now we can move on to installing the connector. Here we are. In order to install the connector, we're going to run a command, sudo Cloud Access Connector install -t, and then we're going to provide it that token that we copied earlier. Paste that here, and then we have a whole bunch of additional parameters. You can enable MFA. We have a self-signed parameter if you're using self-signed certificates, and then we have a lot of different optional flags and parameters that you can use for different configurations. Since this is just going to be a very basic installation, I'm going to run it with the --self signed, and we're going to be prompted to accept the user's license agreement. We will hit yes. We're going to be asked to provide our PCIP registration code. We're going to enter our AD domain. We're asked to provide an AD service account username to be used by the Cloud Access Connector. So in my AD, I created a user called camadmin. And now we have to provide the camadmin password. So I'll copy my super secret password. Enter. Now we're asked to enter a distinguished name for the user group to log into the CAM management interface. By default, it's domain admin. So for this deployment, this user camadmin is part of the domain admin group. If you're specifying another service account user and password that's not part of domain admin, you need to provide the correct distinguished name for that admin for that user group. So, but since I'm using default domain admin, I'll hit next, and our Cloud Access Connector is starting to install. We have fast forwarded this video to the end of the Cloud Access Connector installation. You will know that the Cloud Access Connector installation succeeded when you scroll to the bottom. At the end, when it quits, it will say the IP address of your connector is this, and please visit Cloud Access Manager at cam.teradici.com to further manage your deployment. So now we will navigate to cam.teradici.com. Here we are back inside of cam.teradici.com. We're under our Terra deployment 1, which we created earlier, and we can see our CL-CAC1 connector is showing all healthy. We can click on the connector name, and we're taken to a detailed page of the Cloud Access Connector. We can see the status breakdown, Active Directory, Connection Manager, External Connection Manager, Broker, and all the services are showing healthy. We can also see that our domain controller is showing healthy, and our certificate is not expired, and the overall health status is healthy. We also can see within this, we can also see the internal IP address of our connector, the external IP address of our connector, and also the latest connector version. From this page, now we want to assign workstations to this connector. So we're going to click the Workstation tab on the left-hand side. We're going to hit the plus button next to Remote Workstations. We're going to add an existing remote workstation. Since AWS isn't listed at any of the providers below, we're going to select private cloud and we're going to select remote workstations. When we select remote workstations, we can see that our remote workstations that are joined to the domain are already auto-populating here. So I will select my graphics instance and also my standard instance. And I want to entitle a user. So when I click here, it pulls a list of users from my Active Directory, my Windows Active Directory. So I will select this user, Creighton Lee, and I will assign this user entitlements access to both of these workstations, and I will hit save. We can refresh the page, and now we can see that we have 2 remote workstations, and we have Creighton Lee as a user assigned to both of these workstations. Now we can move on to step 5 and establish a PCoIP session. In part 5, we want to establish a PCoIP session. In order to establish a PCoIP session, we first will need the public IP address of our recently created Cloud Access connector. Here it is right here, 35.163.8.195. Next, we will need to launch a PCoIP software client. So I'm going to launch a Windows PCoIP software client. I will, for the host address or code, I will type in the IP address of this connector. And I will hit next. Now, as you can see, I already found my domain. I need to enter a username. So I will enter the username for my user, Creighton Lee, followed by my password. And I will select login. So now I'm on the desktop selection screen. Here we have a choice of 2 different desktops. We can select our Windows graphics agent, or we can select our Windows standard agent, both which have been entitled to that user. So I'll select my graphics agent and I will hit connect. Here we are, we're inside of our agent. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar and demo. I hope you enjoyed this content and found it helpful. Teradici is currently offering a special 3-month subscription to support remote work and business continuity requirements. This is a temporary offer that is only valid until June 30th. You may click the link in this presentation to inquire about this special offer. Please remember that a copy of today's slides and links to resources are found under the Attachment tab. This webinar is also available to view on demand via the same link at any time if you need to review today's demo steps. We've also hosted a few Cloud Access Software webinars this past week that are focused on helping you work remotely, including Q&A sessions. We've linked to those below too. Make sure to check those out. Feel free to contact us at sales@teradici.com and we will get back to you via email. Thank you and have a great day.